It's time for another Pokes podcast with Oklahoma State Cowboys head coach Mike Gundy as we continue down the line. Week 11 coming up as the Cowboys will venture down to H-Town, where there's a lot of Oklahoma State fans, a lot of former Cowboy players that have come from that town, and it's a good Oklahoma State town. Coach, we will backtrack just a second. Obviously, it wasn't the result you wanted down there in the rain. By the way, that was legit rain down there in Orlando. But how's the team bounced back?
Team's done well. I didn't really like our schemes, offense, defense. Special teams was fine. I mentioned this to the media sometime that every game, my job is to evaluate our concepts versus their concepts. And most of the games, the players determine it, and there's a few games coaches have out-coached the other team or we've undercoached ourselves, and I thought we undercoached. Our schemes weren't good enough. They did a good job. I have to give them credit. We ran into a little bit of a perfect storm. We got in a tough situation. It started pouring. We couldn't throw the ball. Had a couple turnovers, balls bounce off hands and helmets of guys. Couldn't get a break. But the good thing is the team was awesome. On the sideline, they were good. In the locker room at halftime, they were excellent. Coming out after halftime, they were excellent. We went down the field, stalled out on the 9-yard line, had to kick field goal, then got a turnover, and then 2 plays later threw another interception. But overall, their attitudes have been good. They did a good job in the locker room after the game, did a good job on the plane home, and have practiced well this week. And I think sometimes the public forgets half the teams that play college football lose on Saturday. Not 10% or 20%, no. 50%. Now, that doesn't make it right or wrong, but the point being is we have to be able to deal with that adversity and recover and handle it the right way with team chemistry and such. Or when you come back in practice, you really struggle. And the guys have done a really good job. They handled it very mature. We have good leadership, had a good week of practice, and now you look forward to going down and playing at Houston.
Robert Allen filling in for Dave Hunziker, and I bring that up now because every week I think Dave is outstanding as the voice of the Cowboys, bringing Coach some numbers, and I think you guys have some great exchanges there. So here's my number. It's not very big, and I mentioned it to you going in. The margin for this team, the scoring margin, is 1.5 points. Mm-hmm. Just 1.5 points. And when I saw that and looked at that this week, that made me even more proud of these kids because they have found a way to win a lot more games than they have not with a very thin margin to deal with.
Right. That's the evidence of what I tell the public and the media, that we have to practice well every day and be a smart football team and be fundamentally sound. With this group who's been excellent, but because of some of the guys that we lost throughout the year, we don't have a lot of margin, not a lot of room for error. So the practices are so important in getting guys out there, and I feel good about this week. We were able to practice with more guys than we've been able to the last few weeks, but there's not a lot of room for error right now with this football team.
All right, quickly, Houston. It's a reunion of sorts. You know Dana well. Mm-hmm. Dana knows you well from being here. And then not just here for a year, but going head-to-head with Dana when he was the head coach at West Virginia. I like him. I think he's a funny guy.
Oh, sure.
And you know what? I've heard him this week on some of his shows. He has a tremendous respect for this program from when he was here and having to have competed against it at West Virginia.
Yeah, Dana's got his own personality and very unique. I've always gotten along with Dana, and I think when he was here, he was young and energetic and like a lot of coaches, just ready to move on to the next thing after success, and he was driven to become a head coach. I think after he left here a few years later, after being a head coach, he realized the work and the commitment that goes into building a culture, and has learned to respect what we have accomplished here at Oklahoma State. And he's said that over the years. Dana is a pretty straight shooter when it comes to that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes a little bit too much, and it gets him in trouble, just like me. But a very smart offensive coach, and they do a good job. He does a good job because I'm sure he's involved with their offense. I know that he's not calling every play, but finagling and changing his schemes and concepts based on the players he thinks that can help him. And they're actually even running their quarterback some. Who would have thought that he'd be involved with an offense that's running the quarterback? So he's made his changes, and Houston's a good game for us. We go down, there's a lot of people there. There's 7.5 million people that live in Houston, and we have the largest fan base within a certain radius in Houston, bigger than anywhere other than Oklahoma. So it'll be a fun game for a lot of people.
It's going to be kind of a home game. My daughter's down there with her husband, and they can't wait to get the Cowboys in H-Town. And it's time for the old trapper, what's your beef question? And we're going to jump ahead a little bit in time with Coach Gundy here. I know the focus is on Houston and finishing the 2023 season, but next year, Coach, 4 more new teams coming in this league. All 4 coming from the Pac-12. Jed Fish at Arizona, they play Utah and Kyle Whittingham this week, and those 2 could look in the mirror. Those are 2 tough guy teams. Yep. We saw Arizona State, and I think Kenny Dillingham's doing a heck of a job with a lot of obstacles. And, of course, you've been a fan of Neon Deion Sanders out there at Colorado. What's the beef is these new 4 teams coming in next year all look like they could be pretty good.
Well, the conference is just gaining and growing in strength. And from 2 years ago, look where we've come, with the addition of the 4 that came in this year. And then now you talk about the 2 Arizona schools. Utah's has played well for 6, 8, 10 years. And then, you bring in Colorado and what all the dynamics with Coach Sanders and what he brings to the table. And it's going to be fun. And it's going to be a very marketable conference, in my opinion. And just like what you said, you're not sure what you're going to get next year from Colorado. They could revamp their roster again. Arizona is, from the outside looking in, looks to be building more of a culture long term from just that side of it. My youngest son, Gage, he called me about Arizona like 6 or 7 weeks ago and said, hey, I watched this team 2 weeks in a row, and these guys they know what they're doing. They're well coached, and he was right. They're playing really, really good. And then obviously Utah has had success for a number of years. We're aware of them. And Arizona State, since we've played them, they've been competitive or won pretty much every game. They've done a really good job. So Commissioner did a great job. There's a real future to the Big 12, not only from really quality football, but a good marketable league that people want to watch on TV.
Good tough guy game with Arizona and Utah, 2 future Big 12 teams playing each other this week. Of course, the big game for us, the Oklahoma State Cowboys going down to Houston. And next week, to review that and look at the final home game against BYU, Dave Hunziker will be back with Coach. That'll be next week. So let's go Pokes against Houston. And thanks to the coach. We'll see you next week.